In the bustling heart of Lagos, one of the biggest companies in West Africa stood tall, Innovatech Solutions. The multi-billion-dollar empire was a beacon of innovation, creating cutting-edge clean energy technology and smart home devices that had transformed the lives of many. The building, with its towering glass walls and sleek modern design, gleamed under the African sun. Inside, polished floors stretched across a vast open-plan office, where hundreds of staff worked in uniforms that exuded professionalism. But behind the towering gates, the flashing signboards, and the smartly dressed employees, there was a secret that no one knew. Jonathan Mitchell, a name synonymous with success, was the elusive force behind Innovatech. At just 33 years old, he was one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires. Yet despite his immense wealth and influence, his face was unknown to the public. Jonathan had always kept a low profile. He had shunned interviews, ignored press requests, and refused to engage in the digital age of selfies and social media. Why? The answer was simple. He was tired of fake love. Every woman he met loved his wealth, not him. They longed for the fame that came with being close to a billionaire, the luxury cars, the glamorous vacations, and the power that came with his name. But none of them ever cared about the man beneath the polished exterior. Jonathan had been hurt too many times by women who had pretended to love him, only to reveal their true intentions once they were swept into his world of opulence. He had been used, lied to, and humiliated. Enough was enough. "I've had enough of this," Jonathan muttered one evening, pacing around his penthouse office. His assistant, Samuel Watson, looked up at him with curiosity. Samuel had been Jonathan's trusted confidant for years, but even he had never known the depths of his boss's frustrations. "I need a change," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "I want to see how people treat me when they don't know who I am. I want to find someone who will love me for who I really am, not for my money. So I've decided I'm going undercover in my own company." Samuel blinked, unable to grasp the full scope of Jonathan's plan. "Wait, you're going undercover? You're going to pretend to be a poor cleaner?" he asked incredulously. Jonathan's lips curled into a wry smile. "Exactly. If someone can love me when I'm at my lowest, then they deserve me at my best." Samuel was silent for a moment, then spoke, his voice laced with skepticism. "You do realize that means cleaning toilets, scrubbing floors, and doing the grunt work, right?" "I know," Jonathan replied with a nod. "That's exactly what I need. To experience life from a different perspective, to see if anyone will treat me like a human being and not just a billionaire." The very next day, Jonathan began his undercover mission. He chopped his neatly groomed hair short, donned oversized cheap clothes, rubber slippers, and a tattered old cap. He even powdered his face to appear darker, older, and more weathered. Gone was the wealthy owner of Innovatech Solutions. Now he was simply John, the new cleaner. His transformation was complete. He arrived early at the staff gate of Innovatech Solutions, his heart racing with anticipation. As the guard eyed him suspiciously, Jonathan kept his head low and his shoulders slumped, adopting the posture of someone who belonged at the bottom of the company's hierarchy. "What are you here for?" the guard asked, scanning Jonathan's disheveled appearance. "I'm the new cleaner," Jonathan answered gruffly, doing his best to mask the unmistakable smoothness of his regular voice. The guard glanced at the ID card in his hand before pointing towards the building. "Go in. Report to Mrs. Grace Miller, the janitorial supervisor. First hallway on your left." Jonathan nodded in acknowledgement, grateful that no one recognized him as the man who owned this empire. He stepped through the glass doors and into the bustling office. Staff hurried about, making their way to meetings, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, and the hum of fluorescent lights above. Jonathan blended in with the background, invisible in the sea of faces. No one acknowledged him. No one even glanced at him twice. As he made his way to the janitorial office, the weight of his new identity settled on him. For the first time in years, he wasn't the boss. He was just another faceless employee. Inside the office, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense attitude sat behind a cluttered desk. Her name tag read Mrs. Grace Miller. She gave him a cursory glance before speaking. "You're the new cleaner?" she asked, her tone flat. "Yes, ma'am," Jonathan replied, keeping his voice low and rough, like a man who had seen much harder days. "Your duties are the ground floor hallways, the lobby, and the toilets. The cleaning supplies are in the storage room. Get started." She didn't wait for any more conversation. "Yes, ma'am," Jonathan said, taking the broom and mop from the storage closet. His hands shook slightly as he picked up the cleaning supplies, but he quickly steadied himself. He was here for a reason, and he couldn't let any of his old self slip through. The work was exhausting. The toilets were filthy, the floors were caked in dust, and the lobby floor was streaked with smudges. As Jonathan mopped the floors and scrubbed the surfaces, he couldn't help but reflect on his own situation. The menial labor was nothing like the luxurious world he was used to. His back ached and his hands were sore, but he pushed through it. This was what he had signed up for. Each day, Jonathan showed up on time, did his job with quiet diligence, and observed everything around him. Most of the staff barely acknowledged him. Some looked at him with disdain, their noses turned up, while others treated him like he was invisible. But he didn't mind. He was learning exactly what he needed to. It was a few days later when Jonathan's life took a turn. One afternoon, as he mopped the floor in the staff cafeteria, he noticed a young woman sitting alone at a table. She was eating plain rice from a small container, her shoes worn, and the strap of her handbag was patched with thread. But there was something about her, something different. Despite her modest appearance, she smiled at an older cleaner who was wiping down the tables. She offered him water. It was such a small, seemingly insignificant act of kindness, but to Jonathan, it was a spark in the otherwise cold world of Innovatech solutions. Her name was Linda Carter. She was a junior assistant in the IT department, quiet, humble, and hardworking. No one really paid attention to Linda. She avoided gossip and kept to herself. But that small, kind gesture didn't go unnoticed by John. As he passed her table, she looked up and smiled at him. "Good afternoon, sir." Jonathan stopped in his tracks, surprised. "You're talking to me?" he asked, bewildered. "Yes," she replied softly. "I've seen you cleaning this place every day. You work really hard." Jonathan smiled, touched by her words. "Thank you. That's kind of you." He nodded. "May God bless your hands." "Amen," Jonathan responded. "And may he bless yours too." That was the first time anyone had treated him with respect since he had donned his disguise. The exchange lingered in his mind as he continued his work. Later that evening, Jonathan sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on the encounter. He felt something stir in him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was hope. Hope that there might still be someone out there who would see him for who he truly was. When Samuel arrived with food, Jonathan told him about the encounter. "I met someone today. Her name is Linda. She treated me like a human being when no one else did." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to do about it?" Jonathan smiled, a little more hopeful than he had been in months. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. If she's real, if she's genuine, then her life will never be the same again." The next day, Jonathan returned to Innovatech Solutions with more curiosity than before. He continued his cleaning routine, but his eyes were always on Linda. He noticed the way she moved with quiet grace, the way she interacted with people when no one was watching. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her steps were gentle, her tone calm, and there was something about her that spoke to Jonathan's heart. He watched her from a distance as she ate lunch alone, her meal humble but carefully packed. She offered half of her food to a tired office messenger without hesitation. Jonathan felt a lump in his throat. That small act of kindness confirmed what he had suspected. Linda was different. The next evening, Jonathan followed Linda home from a distance. He watched as she walked to a modest two-story building, carrying herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had learned to persevere despite hardship. Later, he shared his findings with Samuel. She lives in a small apartment. She walks to work every day, and she even gave away half of her lunch today. Samuel was silent for a moment, then said, "Wow, that's rare." Jonathan nodded, a quiet resolve settling in his chest. "I'm going to help her." Quietly. She must never know. The next day, Jonathan made sure that Linda's rent for 6 months was paid anonymously. The landlord delivered the good news to Linda, who was stunned and overwhelmed with gratitude. Later, when Linda thanked Jonathan for the unexpected kindness, he smiled gently. "I'm sure they already know how thankful you are. Maybe one day you'll meet them." Days passed, and Linda's feelings for Jonathan deepened. She began to notice the small things about him, the way he treated people with dignity, how he never complained about his circumstances. Soon, she could no longer deny it. She was falling in love with this humble cleaner who had captured her heart. But trouble was brewing in the company. Mr. Charles, the company's general manager, had begun to show an interest in Linda. His intentions, however, were far from pure. One day, he cornered Linda in his office and made her an offer. "You're a beautiful girl, Linda," Charles said, his eyes lingering on her. "I can give you a better life. You don't have to walk to work every day. You don't have to settle for this life. I own this company, all the wealth, all the cars, all the power, it's mine. Stick with me, and I'll make sure you're set for life." Linda, however, was resolute. "Thank you, sir, but I'm not interested." Charles sneered. "You'd rather keep walking to work, wearing secondhand clothes, and eating plain food for the rest of your life?" Linda didn't flinch. "It's better than pretending to love someone for their money." She stood up and walked out of his office, leaving Charles stunned and angry. As the days went by, Jonathan noticed Linda was distant. Her smiles were forced, and she seemed troubled. He sensed something was wrong and decided to confront her. "Are you okay?" Jonathan asked, his voice soft. Linda smiled faintly. "Yes." "You don't look okay," Jonathan said, concern evident in his voice. "You look like you're carrying something heavy." Linda hesitated, then spoke softly. "I've been thinking a lot lately about what you said, about how giving makes me feel like I still have something to offer, even when life is hard." Jonathan smiled, proud of her. "You have so much to offer, Linda, more than you know." Finally, after weeks of confusion, Linda confessed her feelings for Jonathan. "I love you," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've tried to hide it, but I can't anymore." Jonathan's heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too, Linda. I've waited so long to hear those words. You have no idea how happy you've made me." And so, their love blossomed. Months later, at a company-wide staff meeting, Jonathan revealed his true identity. He stepped up to the podium, his calm demeanor radiating confidence. "Yes, I am Jonathan Mitchell," he said, his voice steady. "And I've been working here undercover as a cleaner. I wanted to see who truly respected others and who only respected power." Gasps rippled through the room as Jonathan turned to Mr. Charles. "You're fired," he declared. "You've harassed staff, taken bribes, and abused your position." Turning to Linda, Jonathan smiled warmly. "But someone stood out. Someone who treated me with love and respect even when she didn't know who I was." "Linda, please come forward." Jonathan knelt and proposed to Linda, his heart pounding with excitement. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Linda's eyes as she whispered, "Yes." The crowd erupted into applause, celebrating their love. Months later, Linda and Jonathan married in a beautiful ceremony. As Linda walked down the aisle, her heart full of joy, Jonathan stood at the altar, waiting with love in his eyes. Their story became legendary, and together they continued to run Innovatech Solutions, building a legacy of love, respect, and integrity. and they lived happily ever after. Did you learn anything from this story? Please kindly share your opinion and tell us which country you are watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you could see more videos from me on this channel. Thank you so much.